We have received 47 pages from the FBI on, as Greg would say, extracted information. But again, I get excited when I read Greg's chapter. This is our final chapter in the book. I thought it was an incredible. This man is a professional research historian for 30 years. I couldn't do it, but I hate to say this, ladies and gentlemen, Greg couldn't do it either. What can we do? Now, here in the room, like I said, we've got 17,000 pages. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is any way, please get in contact with us. Because I'm sure you want those documents revealed just like we do. And I'm a little bit emotional about it. Yes, sir. And so here, I called last night. I called last night because this is some of it's based on print information from 3 major universities. And some of it is based on recollection from our family. So what had transpired may be a, shall we say, logical conclusion that both versions, as I said this morning, Robert, as well as the prior version in the summer, may not be too far off. Here's the problem. I talked to my cousin last night, and he says, Bob, anyway, this is credible. He says, we know that Don Reynolds left the country. He fled. So the statements from Hoover, not directly from Hoover, but from an intermediary from Hoover, okay? As my uncle said, that somebody that said, I'm friends with Hoover, and I just want to let you know, are credible. That, Don, your life hangs in the balance. If you don't leave the States, okay, and then fill in the blank. Now, was this specifically mentioned regarding the 36th President of the United States? Could have been. Could have been. But at a minimum, consider this, ladies and gentlemen. Consider this, okay? We have an intermediary from the United States government, contacting my uncle, Don Reynolds. Now, if he says, Don, your life is in grave danger, you should leave the country. If you don't, you won't survive. Assuming that the president was not mentioned, or the vice president was not mentioned, or anybody in the government was not mentioned, how did that intermediary from the United States government know that that act was going to be perpetrated? And potentially, wouldn't it be logical to assume that he knew who would do it? I mean, we're not talking here about babes in the woods, see? And so, either way, whether those monikers of LBJ are mentioned, or even whether they're not, it's not too far of a jump to say who would benefit most by this? Who could carry this out? Anyway, so go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
What year, by the way, Don Reynolds was your godfather, right?
That's yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
What year did your uncle and godfather, Don, godparents
passed away in 1993. I did want to say before we get to that thing about telling about that to my cousins, I did want to relate a story. I was over in Tokyo at the time, and my wife answered the phone. This is when we had phones, right? For all the cell phones and things like that, so this was the old style. And my wife says, Mary Lou's on the phone. Oh, great, I always love to contact her, in Augusta, Georgia, and I bounded to the phone. I said, hi, and she cut me off. She said 2 words, Buck died. Mary Lou, I'm sorry. Then she broke down and wailed. I'll never forget it. She said, pray for his soul. This was the woman who was close to. They were 1 year apart. She flew to Nassau. He fled to Nassau, outside of the country. But she flew to. I've got a picture in the book about them on Beale Street, in Nassau, because she loved him, and she was worried, so afraid, and so his lifestyle she could not countenance. But she loved him dearly as a brother. This is why these interactions, these family interactions, are all a part of a memoir, and it's fascinating. I got a picture of that down at Bill. Now, your other thing was about the year that when that was. To my best understanding, okay, we're here we're having a dinner conversation in Lamar, South Carolina, with my other cousin, not my cousin Rocky, but my cousin Julian, and he's sitting down to dinner, and he's going over what had happened in the scandal. So I would basically estimate we're talking here about roughly 1975, 1976. That would be my best understanding on this. That's correct. That's my best understanding on that. Again, this is. Well, here's the thing.
I just want to know if a transcript exists.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about November 22nd. Is that right? He was in closed session, so it's not quote unquote direct testimony. You see, so that unfortunately that would be out of the purview of quote unquote official. Yes, sir. But I will tell you, if you're very, very much interested, look in the chapter from Despoilers of Democracy by Clark Mauenhoff, Testimony During Disaster. I think that's one of the best dramatic stories that you'll ever see. And Clark Mauenhoff is a great, great journalist. Yes, sir.
Just to be clear about these 17,000 pages.
Yes, sir.
They've identified that they're related to Don Reynolds, but they said you can't have them, or is it just too expensive to get them?
Greg Smith, our archivist, is a professional research historian. He says, I have never, ever, ever in my 30 years had this trouble. He says, if I had known on this journey that it would be this way, I would never do it. But Greg and I started on this, and I've met with Greg, and he's near Madison, Wisconsin. I was near Madison, Wisconsin at the time, and he says, Bob, you got a great story. He says, I know this is really going to break. And he wanted to be a part of it, you see? But ultimately, in the end, that's where we stand right now, unless that's one of the things on the mysteries, the drama and the mysteries. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can help us, if there's any way that you can, we'd appreciate it.
What are they saying? You can't have these documents?
First of all, to give you an idea of what had happened, you've got, at one point it said it would be 79 months before we would get the documents. They like to say months, as opposed to, so you can't, what was 79? So that would be like six and a half years to get these documents. I couldn't wait that long, so we cut down our request. And Greg did it. I said, fine, let's cut the information down, let's reduce it. And we still couldn't get that. Now, I'm not a professional research historian. Greg is. I would counsel that you would read that last chapter And it's a fascinating story for the average citizen as we go through some technical knowledge as well as some non-technical knowledge about how to get these documents. So I'm sorry I can't be more, but I've got the last part about it is with Greg Smith and our work trying to get the documents. Sorry. Yes.
Hey, Bob, from how many years was Don Reynolds in exile? When did he leave the country? When did he come back?
Well, excuse me, this is all emotional to me, ladies and gentlemen. Again, yeah, that's right. As Robert's question was, we're roughly looking at close to 4 years. He would have to come back when he was subpoenaed. In fact, my mother says, Uncle Buck's been subpoenaed, which means, hey, he has to come back to testify, right? But ultimately, he's out of the country. If he's not going to testify, he ain't sticking around, okay? I remember a conversation that he had called us after the election in '68, November of '68, and there was a little bit of cheer because the administration changed at that time. He says, "I'm coming back," and so I would say roughly about 4 years, but he did come in and out when he had to testify. Go ahead.
Bob, he told me that Don Reynolds he actually gave testimony in September 1st, '64. When did his house burn down?
Yeah, this is an interesting story about potential intimidation and about the fact that I did want to mention what Robert said. There were 2 stories of intimidation, I believe, or at least a case could be made. When my uncle was in Nassau, he wrote to Senator Williams. This is in the book. He says, Senator Williams, I was awoken at 1:30 in the morning in my apartment in Nassau. An operator came on and said, just a moment. And then a voice said, this is Bobby Baker. And I just want to let you know that if you come back to the United States and testify as a state witness, Don, you won't survive. All of those, that letter is in the book. And now what Robert was saying, I have many, many wonderful memories of Garrett County, Maryland, and going to my uncle's farmhouse in the wood, in the mountains and in the woods. And my uncle was testifying, I believe, on September 1st, 1964. I think I have the documents there. The Garrett County Republican recounts the story. On August 27th, 1964, the remodeled farmhouse of Don Reynolds burned to the ground. No one was in the house, and like that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have never solved the mystery. That's another one of the mysteries, the drama and the mysteries that we're asking for you. Even after 60 years, if you have any information, please let us know, because we've tried, and they never did find out the cause of the fire. But isn't it interesting, as Robert said, we've got 4 days before Don Reynolds gives, arguably, dramatic testimony to the United States Senate. His farmhouse burned. Not his apartment in Washington, D.C., but his summer farmhouse in Garrett County, Maryland, burns to the ground. Wow. Thank you very much. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? I appreciate your time today. God bless you. Thank you so much.